I've been playing a 200 NL session here across 4 tables. Let's go over the most interesting hands I played. I'll explain my thought processes and we'll use the solver to get a better understanding about GTO. Let's get right into it. GTO Wizard has 7 max coin poker ranges, and so this chart shows that the Queen 9 is indeed a raise most of the time. And so all the commentary I'll be doing is before I take a look at the solve outputs myself, just so you know. And at the time I think, this seems like a pretty good board for the racer. I think we're gonna have a bunch of c-bets here, and I think this hand can c-bet for small, that is. In GTO I think we're gonna have all kinds of sizes, including bigger sizes, from anything from 1/3 until like maybe over pot. Yeah, if you choose just one sizing, maybe you can go half pot or something, but this Queen 9, I just chose to check. And by the way, I am using an RNG, it's off screen. It's a sort of timer that looks like this. Every 2 seconds it shows a number. Just so you know, and I will be telling per decision if I'm mixing or not. Right, I can now easily do that with just comment with this kind of commentary. So the Queen 9, I think I was mixing, but I think I'm just gonna mostly be checking this. It's just kind of a nice hand to check for several reasons. So yeah, I chose to check this most of the time. And so my intuition that it is a good board for the raiser may not be that accurate. Seems to be, it's pretty equal in equity actually, taking a look at the equity lines. But if you take a look at the c-bet strategy for the small blind here, we see the solver, if it chooses one size, it's choosing a mega 215% overbet, which is crazy. You don't really see anybody doing that. So it's mostly just checking and going for the huge overbet. Now if we give the solver the option for a 33% sizing, 75% sizing and 150% sizing, we still see that the solver is choosing the overbet most of the time, but it is choosing the other smaller sizes a little bit, and it's still mostly checking. So yeah, apparently this is really an overbet kind of c-betting situation for the out of position player here. It has, of course, the overpair advantage. Other than that, it doesn't really have an advantage, it seems, which is basically why it's going for the check or overbet here, I guess. Kind of leveraging that overpair advantage to be able to overbet large like this with very strong hands and some strong semi-bluffs, let's say. The Queen 9 is, even with the smaller sizes, pretty much always checking. We see it can go for a little bit of a 1/3 sizing. Like I said, we could. But my intuition about just wanting to check here seems pretty good, at least. So I do check. So we just saw that the flop was almost a pure check. I think the turn is in fact a pure check. The turn should be more of a check than on the flop. And in game I also figured that. I think I was just pure checking here. And we see that the solver chooses a pretty large sizing on the turn again, 100% pot size. It's indeed checking the Queen 9 again. Pure for this sizing, and if we give the solver the same sizes we gave it earlier on the flop, the three sizes, it is gravitating towards the 75% sizing, and it is still pretty much always checking the Queen 9. Now here I remember taking quite a long time to think and act. I was thinking if I could go for the check raise here. Of course we got a top pair, two pairs, so check raise is perhaps on the table. We are blocking the 9 that would check back and otherwise call us. So check raise was definitely consideration. I ended up going for the 1/3 sizing. I think we can also bet larger, but we got called by an unknown hand. Let's check the solve. I'm curious. Yeah, and we see the solver is choosing the 67% sizing for both sides actually. The queen 9 is mostly betting, but it does have checks. Like I said, we are blocking the 9, which is probably one of his major bluff catching cards that will also check back if we check. So since we're blocking that, that gives us more incentive to check, because for blocking hands that will call us, that would otherwise check. So we're better off just betting any sort of value betting hand that unblocks that 9, so we can get called more if we value bet. Now when we're blocking the 9 with queen 9, we get called less because we're blocking that 9. That gives us more incentive to put it in the sort of checking range, whether we're going for the check call or check raise, which we'll see later. But so yeah, that is actually a pretty good reason to check, and that did go to my mind. But what also went to my mind at the time is that it's pretty hard to go for the check raise, but it depends on his sizing, which again we will see later. But we can see here in the solve, if he just bets 67%, which is reasonably large, it's just kind of a regular sizing, we cannot go for the check raise, so we just go for the check call with queen 9. In this solution, he checks 34% of the time just to check call, which is kind of a little bit, for humans, I'd say counterintuitive. Like, okay, got 2 pairs, pretty good hand. We want value, right? We're thinking about value. And then just to play passively with a check call line, like we're having some sort of marginal bluff catching hand. So if we give the solver multiple sizes for both sides, in this case I gave the small blind 33% and 75%. And the big blind I gave 50%, 75%, 100% and 150%. We can see the queen 9 is still going for the check and is mostly betting. But when the big blind bets 50%, we can see the queen 9 can actually go for the check raise a portion of the time. And is still calling most of the time, but it's now mixing. So in true GTO, it's kind of like, okay, like we want to mix here. We can bet 1/3, we can bet bigger. And we can actually check to sort of check this side, depending on this bet size, whether we go for the check call or the check raise. So that is like typical solver stuff that is a little bit hard for us humans to comprehend. Like, okay, it's kind of like, I see this more often in solvers, like we got a strong hand, we're checking a little bit of the time, but not going for the check raise, mostly just going for the check call, taking the passive action. I think, and when that happens, that kind of, that kind of thing that solvers do a bunch, it's most of the time it's just because we're blocking a bunch of his bluff catchers in this case with the 9. And so yeah, that kind of thing made this a little bit of a tough spot for me. I remember my brain crunching about it, like, okay, we can check here, we cannot really check raise, do we want to go for the check call? It's kind of like not easy for our brains to come to the right conclusion as for solvers, of course. Like, they don't have brains, they crunch the numbers and they come to this perfectly balanced solution. But our brains, have to crunch about it. So I guess we just have to see this in solvers a lot and let our brains accept the reality of these kinds of spots, that sometimes we have 2 pair, strong hand, we're checking a little bit just to stay balanced, but we're just check calling. So I think it's just something that we gotta accept and learn from the solvers, and it's something that I still also apparently struggle with. So all in all, I went for 1/3, which is viable sizing. We're mostly going bigger with this hand if we're splitting, so I played this hand decently, I'd say.